Hi, everybody. I'm Alex, and welcome back.
Hi, I'm Sue.
So, this session, we're going to talk about this concept of courage, Sue, and I'm really genuinely enthusiastic to hear what you've got to say about courage because I think people, again, as we've said with multiple things, they confuse what these words mean. And personally, I'm a bit obsessed about the importance of understanding or the terms we use. So if I was to put you on the spot and say, what's a fantastic definition of courage, what would you say?
Well, for me, I go back to what's known as the courage equation, which is the willingness to act divided by fear. And we can dig into that in more detail, but basically, it reminds us that courage has a fear component to it. Sometimes, when we see someone acting what we think is, oh, they're so courageous, we kind of make the assumption that they're not fearful. And yet, actually, we might feel scared or anxious or worried or overwhelmed. And that's actually a part of courage.
Right. That's fascinating. So fear and courage are an integrated process at its
Mm.
heart. So what makes the difference? What's the transition between fear and courage?
Well, I think it's where this equation comes in, and I'll credit Robert Biswas-Diener for a lot of this that he sort of captures in his book, is the willingness to act divided by the level of fear. So let's imagine that there's something that I don't really want to do, I'm scared of, I'm nervous of, etc. And it could be, we spoke before about public speaking,
Yeah.
and I am scared of that. If we look at your willingness to act divided by your fear, it will give you an indication of whether you'll be courageous enough to do it. So if we think about my willingness to act is a 2, because the topic's not that important to me, I'm not sure I'm really bothered, somebody else is trying to make me do it, and my fear is an 8, I'm not going to do it. But if my willingness to act is an 8, because it's really important to me, it's a topic, I want to share it, I want to get that information out there, and my fear is a 3, I'm going to do it. But that immediately then gives us a clue about how we can be more courageous. So we've got two components we can play with. Do I want to increase my willingness to act, or do I want to decrease my fear? If I do both of those, chances are I will actually be courageous. I will exhibit courage.
Awesome. So why would that be of any benefit to anybody?
Well, I don't know about you, Alex, but I think there are many things in life that it's easy to feel a little scared by. I don't know about anybody listening to this or about you, but I know there has been so many times in my life where if I don't know if I can do this, oh, I'm not, I'm scared, I'm nervous, I'm worried, whatever the emotion word that we use is. And yet, many of those things, if we do overcome that fear, it goes on to potentially be some of the best things we've done or something we're proud of, etc. And I think, again, that's really important for us to understand. If we get anybody here to think about something they're proud of, they've probably had to overcome some sense of nervousness, worry, fear, etc., in order to get there. So, therefore, understanding those two components and leveraging that courage can only help us. And it's not just about courage as far as, you want to do I don't know, jump out of an airplane with a parachute or do a bungee jump or whatever it could be as far as taking on a role that you're not sure you're comfortable with, moving to a different location where you don't know anybody, leaving a relationship that you know isn't good for you. There's so many things where courage becomes important to us in life.
That's a beautiful descriptor, and it reminds me of reading some research, and it was a long time ago now, so I think the figures are probably going to be slightly inaccurate, but it talked about when women will apply for positions
Mm.
versus men, and men will apply when they're above 30-40% confident, and women wait for 70 to 80% confidence before they'll apply. So being
Yeah.
courageous in that space, what would that look like?
Yeah, and I think for me, that's again really important for us. This is why I like the science. You and I both are the same. When you've got the research, I think to myself, okay, what's my willingness to act? Well, do I really want this job? Do I think it would be a good stretch for me? Do I think I can make a difference? Okay, well, how do I increase that willingness to act actually? Because I do really want it. I do think I can make a bigger difference. And maybe I can ratchet that from a 7 to a 9. But then the most important thing is, can I ratchet my fear back a few numbers of a scale of 1 to 10? And the thing that I always love about this is reminding ourselves that fear is an emotion. It's just data, it's information, it's trying to tell us something. And if you think about that, what fear is trying to tell us, it's telling us that we're feeling physically or psychologically threatened. And to your point, if I'm going for a job that I'm not sure I can do it, it's a psychological threat. There's nothing physical that's going to
Yeah.
have happened to me at this point in time, just going for the interview. It's psychological, which ironically comes back to the judgment again. Why? Why am I feeling fearful about something that hasn't happened? What is the psychological threat? Am I going to think am I nervous because I'm going to get socially rejected? They're going to turn me down. Okay, well, maybe, but they haven't yet. So how do I then put that fear from a 10 out of 10 down to a maybe a 7 out of 10? Well, it hasn't happened yet. It's okay. And then I might ask myself questions around, well, if I do get rejected, have I been rejected before? Have I handled it? Yes, I have. I'm okay. So that might ratchet it back again from a 5 to a 6 or a 5. So for me, it would be putting tools in my toolkit to say, how do I deal with the fear so I can pull it back from being a 10 out of 10 to a 7 out of 10 to a 3 out of 10. My willingness to act is still at a 7 or 8. Awesome. Show up for that interview.
Beautiful. And I've been sitting reflecting on your comment about the feeling of pride when you've been courageous and you moved on.
Mm.
Uh, and trying to think back through moments of my life when I've actually felt that because I haven't, or I don't recall feeling proud when I didn't have to show
Of
some
course.
courage. So what about moments in your life? Can you describe a moment in your life where you acted courageously and felt proud of yourself?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting one. And I love what you said about we don't often think about the proud bit. So if I think about when I first started my business, I'd actually thought about that for about 18 months before that. Wouldn't it be nice? And if I could, etc. And how can I afford it? I won't have a real job. I won't have a salary coming in. I don't think I can do it. And I pulled back every time and I got another job. So I was in one I didn't like, and I moved on from that one to another one. I was having these thoughts about starting my own business. No, 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 no. And then I thought about it again when I lost my job because we all got made redundant. The organization and I was basically working for Travelland, and that when Ansett collapsed, we all lost our job. So I'm like, oh, I should do it again. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I can. But at this point, it was like, okay, I'd been thinking about this 3 times through different roles of now just do it. It's almost like the universe has sort of given me that extra push. You've been made redundant this time. It's not even your choice. You're going to have to do something. And thing is, I didn't think about it as something I was proud of then. I thought it was scary. It was exciting, scary. And I often think when you're feeling fear or anxiety, if you can put some excitement and some enthusiasm with it, it sort of has a nice balance. So it was exciting, scary. It's only probably been later that I've thought, actually, I'm really proud of that because a bit like you, nobody in my family had been to university. I remember you talking about that, like it just was not the done thing where I grew up. But I put myself through university as a mature age, I suppose I would have been called in my mid to late 20s student. And so the pride then started to evolve as the business grew and I got more qualified and I got more clients. But I wouldn't have thought about it necessarily at the time. It was just that moment of, okay, it is scary, but now is my extra push, and I have a stronger willingness to act because I've just been made redundant. So it is what it is. Let's give it a go. So I think there was an element of that. And actually, sorry, Alex, I was just thinking about the sort of the fear. It was also an element of even if I don't earn that much money initially, can we get by on what we've got? So it was also a bit of logical working out of can we survive? A bit like, we've talked about before is if this goes wrong, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
Well, can I deal with the worst that can happen? Yeah, I probably can, because the worst probably won't happen.
So why did you do that? Why didn't you just do what everybody else would have done and just sat and waited and found a job? Where did the courage come from, I guess is the question.
I think it was more the willingness to act increased because I had something that I wanted to offer that I didn't think was there at the time. I thought I had the ability to what I call synthesize the science. So to take the science and synthesize it down into practical tools. So, and that's going to be different for different people, but it was for me, this is something I'm good at. These are my strengths. I seem to be able to impart things in a way that inspires people to action. So I kind of wanted to do that. And it was it was not necessarily trusting myself because I still had those doubts now and again, but it was believing that I perhaps had something that I could bring to the table, something that I could offer. And then to your point is, could I deal with it if it fails? Yeah, I could. I would still be able to do that. So it was sort of balancing the pull of, do I really want this? And yes, I do. And I think I can do something with it, to the, even if it fails, can I cope? And another interesting one, if I may, around this sort of courage, because it's a completely different example. But many, many years ago, I decided when I was doing a backpacker year around Australia that I was going to do a bungee jump. Now, when I left England for my year, my just before I left, I had actually broken my back. So I'd broken two bones in my spine. And I was in a plaster cast actually when I got on the plane for 24 hours to come to
Wow.
Australia. And my mum made me promise the only thing I wouldn't do is a bungee jump.
Yeah.
I had no intention of keeping that promise. Sorry, mum.
Yes.
Anyway, about sort of 7 or 8 months later, I did a bungee jump. But what was really interesting, going back to this courage piece, because that's a real example of courage. I went with a couple of other people from the backpackers hostel. We climbed to the top of the platform in Cairns. We're looking out, and they both went first. Off they trundled, and off they trundled, and great. And I'm up there for a 12 o'clock spot to jump, and I got all strapped in, etc. And the person's behind me, guiding me, telling me what I had to do, and I couldn't do it. I was absolutely terrified. And I was frozen to the spot. And after about 10 minutes, he said, look, I'm really sorry. You're going to have to unstrap. You're going to have to send the next person. If you're not going to jump, you're not going to do it. And I was absolutely terrified and just couldn't do it. So, to your point about courage, if I now link it back to the science, the willingness to act by the fear. So, I was determined that I would not walk back down those steps.
Wow.
So, my absolute thing was the only way I'm getting down is to jump. So, not walking back down. So, that increased my willingness to act. Like it's an absolute rule I'm putting on myself. You do not walk back down those steps. But then I had to deal with the fear. And this is the funny bit. I sat up there for 5 hours.
What? Wow.
And it was basically I sat up there. I'm not walking back down, and I'm looking out at the trees, and you can see the Great Barrier Reef and the ocean in the background, etc. And I'm like, right. And I thought, right, I've got to reduce this fear. I've got to breathe. When I get up there, I'm picturing it. I know what it's like. I know what it's like now to have the straps on my feet and how it feels like. I felt like it's basically jumping with no net. It didn't feel like I had a net at all. And I fixed on a red roof in the background. So there was a bright red roof that I could see. And I'm like, right. So I sat there for 5 hours and I'm thinking about it. I'm seeing the roof. Like when I get up there, I'm just going to breathe. I'm going to look at the roof and I'm going to imagine myself jumping towards the roof and it's all going to be good. So what I can see now is I was increasing my willingness to act and I was using strategies to breathe, to think about my physiology, to visualize, to reduce my fear. What was really interesting is at 5 o'clock at the end of the day, I'm still sitting there and the guide says, okay, you're going to do it? And I'm like, yep. Okay. Because he says I'm packing up for the night.
Yeah.
And so he straps me back in and I stand up and I've got a different perspective now. And I'm like, where's my red roof? Where's my red roof? And I couldn't see it.
Wow.
And what actually happened is he kind of gave me a bit of a shove.
Excellent. That's fantastic.
But it's a great example of courage. And
Yes.
then somebody else had to give me the final push.
Exactly. That's brilliant. Yes.
I hadn't thought about that in years. Thank you for
Yes.
helping me remember.
That's cool. And I'm guessing again you're really proud of yourself for that.
I am absolutely. And the funny thing is, so many people after they did one bungee jump were like, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again. I didn't experience that at all. I was like, I'm very happy never to do that again. But I also felt, and I think this is an important thing of courage, and it links back to what you said before about things you're proud of, where courage has been present, is when I sort of lay in the little dinghy at the bottom after being unstrapped, and they sort of pulling me to shore because it was over water. I remember thinking to myself, if I can do that, I can do anything.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yes.
I'd
Yes.
love to know what a courageous thing from you too.
Actually, in some ways, it's quite similar. So as you were talking about the beginning of your business, I was thinking about the beginning of my business, and how there were some real strong similarities, and I found all sorts of reasons not to do it. I was really excited by wanting to start my own business for the very first time. And it was moving into the coaching arena, and it combined all of my passions. But I was really afraid of it, less about the dollars and more about what if I couldn't do it? What if I was not good enough for it? So I started to find all sorts of reasons. And one of the reasons I saw was the amount of money people were charging for coaching.
Mhm.
And I thought it was morally wrong that people were asking extraordinary amounts of money. And at the time, I was talking to a lecturer. I was doing a master's of business coaching, and I was talking to one of the lecturers there, and she said, "Well, charge what you have to charge to get the business, and what you don't want, give to charity." And I thought I couldn't think of an answer to that, so I kind of lived with that for a while, and then she kept challenging me to set up my own business. And then one day she just said, "If not now, when?"
Mm.
And that was my push. That was the bungee jump push. And it was that, yeah. And again, all the fear in that moment disappeared. It was like, well, I've always got the default position, which was my clinical background, to fall back onto.
Mm.
And then, ironically, before I set the business up, I did what I was really quite, looking back, quite strange. But I got rid of my clinical registration so that that safety net wasn't there.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
so I forced myself into the position where I had to make it work.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
love that. Thank you for
yeah.
sharing.
That's cool, no problem. But yes, there was such a resonance when you were talking about your experience of starting your business. So yes.
Yeah, and I do wonder, Alex, when we feel that, it's being aware that that hesitation, that nervousness, that worry, that fear, that anxiety it's a normal part of courage. It's interwoven into courage.
So can you think of a moment where you look back now and wish you had been courageous?
Yes. So I think I do. I think one of the ways that I sometimes haven't been courageous is actually more with other people.
Mm,
Um, as in, sometimes I think I am being kind by not saying something because I don't want to hurt somebody, but actually, it would have been possibly kinder if I had been courageous and said something. If we talk about, you've got somebody in your team who's not performing, it takes courage to have that conversation, and you might not always get it right. And sometimes the easiest thing to do is not to have that conversation.
yeah.
And so I think sometimes I may have got there, I may have plucked up the courage eventually, but I probably haven't done it soon enough where I've served a disservice to myself when it's been somebody in my own business. But I've also, in hindsight, probably done a disservice to them because if they're not performing, it's a horrible conversation to have, but you need to have it. But also, I might be, by not being courageous, and I think this is something for us all to think about, by me not being courageous, they may assume that everything's wonderful and they're awesome at what they do, and they might not be. So, is that protecting them or is it actually unhelpful?
I think that's an absolutely gorgeous example, Sue, and such a common one, in
Mm.
fact. And I remember I was being mentored by a gentleman in the United States, and we had an almost identical conversation where he was talking about going into multiple businesses as a mentor to the leaders. And people would say, "Oh, Fred over there or Josephine over there, they're not performing well, and if they don't improve, they're going to be out of the business." And the person who was mentoring me would say, "Well, have you told that
Yeah.
person?" And almost universally, the answer was no. And it was,
Mm.
well, that's cruel.
Yeah.
You're not giving them the opportunity to improve.
Yeah, and I wonder that's where my lack of courage sort of sometimes comes from. And I remember one particular gentleman who worked with me, and I did have the courageous conversation, and I sort of we sat down. I tapped him on the arm, and because he understands this stuff, I said, both of us are going to have a threat response around this conversation.
Yeah.
So, actually acknowledging this is tough, it's difficult. And it went beautifully. And yet there's been other people that they probably think they're going really well. And then by the time I've built up the courage, it's almost like it comes blurting out in a way that is probably not very good. And it's like, I really should have told them they weren't performing much, much
Yeah.
sooner, and it probably wouldn't be in the situation it is now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think I can do better sometimes.
But I think it's really hugely important for us to explore this, Sue, because where I'm heading is asking you, how can people learn to be courageous? But
Yeah.
we need to know what gets in the way.
Yeah, and I think what gets in the way is again overthinking things. It does
Yeah.
with lots of things. You want to do something nice for somebody else and you overthink it of how will they react if I do. Simple things like I want to pay for someone's coffee next in the
Yeah.
queue. Well, what if they think that I think that they can't afford it or something? Like we overthink what's going to happen. We overthink in our head, well, how will they respond? Sometimes, I don't know about you, but people, I know I do, and I know people play out whole conversations in
Yes.
their head and it doesn't go well. So it's like, oh no, I won't do it. So I think we get in our own way with overthinking things. I think sometimes with the courage component, we also get in our own way by forgetting that there is a fear component.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to deal with the fact that, yes, I'm feeling anxious, nervous, worried, and it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to tell you this, 'cause it's just an amazing conversation we're having here. Well, I think it would be roughly about a week ago now. My wife had been to the supermarket, and when she came back, she was saying that there'd been a couple of people in the queue in front of her, and they couldn't afford a couple of the items, and they were having to put them back, and she wanted to pay for them, but she was fearful of what they would say. Would they become angry at that suggestion? And then she ended up giving herself grief because she didn't actually do what she wanted to do. So,
It's a perfect example. Yeah, we
yes,
overthink things sometimes.
yeah. So, for our listeners, who want to develop the skill of courage, what would be somewhere they could start?
Again, I always want to come back to the little things. I think that's a real theme of our conversations here is the little things of asking yourself, where have you overcome something before? Where have you done well before? Where have you been uncomfortable and you've succeeded before? Because I can guarantee all of us have. And
Yeah,
again, sometimes we want to go too big. Have I changed the world yet? Well, maybe not, but I can guarantee there have been little things that you've done where you felt uncomfortable, where you felt nervous, etc. So that would probably be one of the small things is reflect on what are the little things that you've already done. If it's something bigger that you're going for, like you mentioned before about this sort of idea that I might not go for a job that I think I would love to do, look at where have I done certain things well before. I might not have had that job title before, but most jobs involve some sort of communication skills, some sort of relationship skills, some sort of organization type, functional skills, if you like. Where have I done some of those before? And jot those down, the little things. If I go back to the bungee jump, I'd never done a bungee jump before, but I'd done plenty of other things that were a little scary, whether it's whitewater rafting or etc. So it's jotting down when have you done certain things before where you felt fearful and managed to get over it, and reminding yourself of those. What strengths did you use? What got you through it, etc. That would probably be my first tip because I think reflecting on yourself is always a good
yeah,
start. But then I would be looking at that fear, that courage equation. So willingness to act divided by fear, and give them a score out of 10. What's your willingness to act right now? Where is it on the 1 to 10? 10 being absolutely, there's no question, 1 being, no, I don't really want to. And then reflect on, okay, what's my level of fear right now? Again, 1 to 10, 10 being it's debilitating, 1, it's minor. And then what little steps could you put in place to switch those numbers around if you need to? Because once you get the willingness to act greater than the fear, chances are you'll draw on that courage that you need.
and how would you suggest people react when they become the Sue who goes up to the bungee jump and doesn't jump and walks back down the stairs? How do you deal with that?
Well, as I say, I think that's a really interesting one. Is there would been even if I hadn't have jumped and I'd walked back down, I'm sure I could have had a level of compassion for myself and understanding, etc. But what I know is it's the things we don't do that we're more likely to regret rather than the things we do do. So I know what worked for me. It may not work for somebody else, but one of the things is I would have certain rules. So a bit like you said, if not now, when? My rule I put on myself is you are not walking back down those steps. So the only way of getting down is either attached to a bungee cord or not attached to a bungee cord. Which one are you going to do? So it was almost like I really do need to, for me personally, I need to sort of put those things in place that give me the pep talk, I suppose, that we need. And I love the fact that yours was just a flippant thing that someone just said to you, if not now, when?
Yeah,
So asking ourselves those little things as well about reminding ourselves, is this something I'm going to regret if I don't do it?
yeah,
Because we often do that, and you hear it all the time. It's the things at the end of someone's life that they regret the things they didn't do, the chances they didn't take, the
yeah.
relationships they didn't connect with. And so I think that's probably a good reminder for people as well.
Now, I've got two more questions. This one might seem a bit kind of off track, but for people who are parents, how can they encourage courage in their children?
I think that's a really good one. And I think the key thing is to remember that fear isn't bad. It's data, it's information, it's trying to tell you something and helping the child deal with that fear. Because I see a lot of people who seem fairly confident. In fact, I had this conversation recently about a beautiful person, 19 years of age, who's confident in who they are, way more confident than I was at their age, and yet not courageous. And so, to your point, is how do we stretch ourselves? How do we push ourselves? And again, if you think about courage, and again, remember that equation, willingness to act divided by fear, is I don't have to leap out of my comfort zone and go to I'm currently here and it's like, woohoo, all the way over there and I've got to zoom over. It's pushing myself a little bit. So again, reminding myself of what I've already done that's good and stretching myself a little bit further through a bit of discomfort, through a little bit of nervousness, worry, anxiety. I don't have to suddenly go to 100 out of
Yeah,
100 and push myself that way. So I think as a parent, encourage your children to be uncomfortable. Don't just throw them out into, sort of no man's land by themselves, but take away some of the comfort, the ease that we sometimes create. And it's something I remember hearing, and I've heard it a number of times. I remember hearing it the first time, I know probably a comedian, is that we're so used to comfort now. In our cars, we once upon a time, we never had air conditioning. Air conditioning was you rolled a window down.
yeah,
But now we don't even have to do that. We just push a button here or push a button here.
yeah.
And so I think we're often very used to comfort. And therefore, as a parent, sometimes it's important for you to be able to sit with the discomfort yourself of your child being uncomfortable and feeling the fear. And it's okay, they'll figure it out.
And the final question relates to something that we've said at the very beginning of working together on these podcasts, is that we're both practitioners,
Mm.
and we're at well at this moment that we're recording this, we're closing in on the end of 2025. As
Mm.
you look to 2026, where are you going to be courageous in 2026?
Oh, that's a great question. I think for me, one of the things I want to be courageous about is the bigger picture. So, yes, it's the little things that I need to do. As we know, it always comes back to what do I do in those circumstances. But the courage to perhaps go bigger. I think this world has lots of different challenges. But I know one of the sentences I use at the end of one of my keynotes is, we created this mess, we have the ability to change it.
Yeah,
So for me to be more courageous in that, I often hold myself back because I assume that the academics usually have way more knowledge, way more, they should be the one doing it. I don't know, I'm not this, I'm not that. And so it's easy that if people don't pick me, I don't put up my hand and go, I can do this. So I think for me, I'm not going to wait to be picked.
fabulous. That's fantastic.
What about you? That's a good question for me to throw back.
Yeah, uh, there's something I've been putting off for quite some time, which is actually writing again. I haven't written for quite some time, and ironically for the same reasons as you've just described. particularly the kind of more formal researchers and academics in our field. They are the ones who should write this stuff. But I want to write about hope. And yeah, today you've challenged me through this conversation to just get on and do it.
I love that, Alex, because to your point is when it comes to writing, I'm often like, why does nobody ask me to write a book chapter? Why do some of the universities don't ask me to be a guest lecturer? I'm really
Yeah.
good at what I do. Why do they
Yeah.
not ask me? But to your point, maybe we need to stop waiting to be asked and we just need to go do.
Exactly. So, as we wrap this conversation up today, I challenge our listeners to let us know what it is they're going to be courageous with. So, reach out, send a message, and let us know in 2026 what's their challenge to be courageous.
Love it. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, so cheers.